Thank you for joining the professor, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you have not subscribed, I would ask that you subscribe and share the link with your friend and family. In an historic and far-reaching decision, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, declaring that the constitutional right to an abortion no longer exists. Writing for the majority of the court, Justice Samuel Alito wrote that the 1973 case of Roe v. Wade was egregiously decided, so much so that it amounted to judicial abuse of discretion. But what does it mean to not, for many women in many different parts of this country, who will not have the opportunity to make decisions about themselves, about their body, about their reproductive right? Today in The Professor, we have a young lady, Miss Jeanette, who's going to share her story with us. And her story could have been very different if this happened to her or to anyone right now. Miss Jeanette, thank you so much for joining The Professor. My first question to you, and of course, you and I had a prior conversations about Roe v. Wade, and this is something I know you feel very strongly about. But how did you feel when you heard that the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, taking away a constitutional right of a woman to make her decision for her own body, deciding what happened to her? What did you think, and how did you feel?
Well, when you use those words, how did I feel? Honestly, I feel raped again, re-victimized. For one, I really wish that we as the people and the government would stop calling this a constitutional right. It is a birthright. We're born by ourselves, we die by ourselves, and how we live our lives should be the way we determine it. So this is a birthright. It should not even be up for discussion. What we do with our bodies, our minds, how we this is not something that should be up for debate. It's not something that should be discussed amongst politicians or strangers. These are very personal things, very personal decisions, what you do with your body. So that's for one. So yes, I feel raped again. I am a victim and survivor of child sexual abuse, as well as a sexual assault as a young adult, in which it did lead to pregnancy. A pregnancy I'm very happy that I carried through. I'm very happy for the decision that I made. I do not regret it. It was the best decision ever made. But what is important here is I made that decision. Unlike assault, unlike things out of your control, medical reasons, there's so many reasons outside of rape and assault and incest for why a woman would have to have such a procedure performed. But ultimately, these are things that are done to us. We have no control. Very few times we have control. Most of the times when we're performing these procedures, it's because we have to. That's the reality of it. We could spin it a different way in the media to make it sound good, to appease the agenda, but the truth is, most of the times we do not. And one of the things I will say that allowed me to move forward and heal in these many years that it takes to heal is the fact that I know, although something was done to me, I made a decision and a choice from there forward. I had the choice. I was not told I have to stay in the situation. There's a lot that comes with it. No one in the government, no one in the family really deals with the aftermath of what's happening. In my case in particular, the decision I made, I have to live with. I have to see how I'm going to mentally and emotionally and spiritually deal with the constant reminder every day of this life that I chose to keep, which is the entire point.
Let me, this is so emotionally charged, because when people talk about abortion, most of the time, the people who are pro-life, they often believe that women sometimes use abortion as a form of birth control, that people just decided to abort a child. Now, your case is very, very different. You were a young adult who were sexually assaulted by a stranger. and the sexual assault result in a pregnancy, and you struggle with the decisions of whether or not to keep that child, whether or not to go through with the pregnancy.
Absolutely.
And you did go through with the pregnancy, correct?
I did. And it was my personal choice, my personal God, it was not forced upon me, as I would not force a decision upon someone else. Not everyone is able, not everyone can say, I am a victim and a survivor. Many people, I know people close to me who are victims, and that's where their story ends. They continue to be a victim of that crime, and some even commit suicide. These aren't decisions that are made easily. They're not. And so to add being criminalized, I can't imagine being in today's world with that situation that I had and being told I am a criminal, just like the person who committed these offenses against me, because I now am not obligating myself to endure this punishment for the rest of my life. Thankfully, I did not view it as such, but that is not everybody's story. And we cannot pretend that one situation is everybody's situation. Unfortunately, I feel that those who use the excuse of it's pro-life are ignoring all of the other factors. For one, if we are pro-life, then where does that actually begin? Because we say it begins the moment it's conceived. Well, then why doesn't life insurance begin at that moment, and child support? And so many other things that we have flawed in the system. And if that's the case, then why aren't we charging men who impregnate us against our will with rape or some sort of violation or citation against that? Because ultimately, the fact of the matter is, it begins in the men. So we are regulating women's bodies that we are the effect, we are after the fact. It is the man who releases. So it is the man who's ultimately in full control and responsible of whether or not this happens. So why aren't we regulating them and their bodies? Why aren't we saying
maybe
it is unlawful for you to do this?
Well, maybe we ought to have birth control for men, so that
for men, why
every man that reaches the age of puberty, who could actually impregnate a female should be mandated to get in birth control.
Exactly. I mean, I feel that, we often say, well, at the end of the day, if we're pro-life, then why does the pro-lifers, and I am very much pro-life, but why does it stop from the moment the baby's born? Once a baby's born, we say what to the parent? Oh, that's your problem. You have to pay for schooling. You have to figure it out. Oh, you're on welfare or any sorts of government assistance? Oh, shame on you. You shouldn't have had a child if you couldn't afford it.
Well, but
so now it's no longer our problem.
But I agree. Listen, I agree with you. But I agree with you. But here's the thing, though. We have to look at it from a political point of view. The Democrats, certainly most of them, if not all of them, are pro-choice, which is fine. But a lot of Republicans that are pro-life really wants to penalize women. They want women, once you're pregnant, to carry the pregnancy to term. Even in situation, like your situation, where you were sexually assaulted, or in other people's situations where there were incest, there were some Republicans who would tell you that the woman should carry the child to term. But I like the fact what you said is very interesting, that the Republicans are interested only in the woman's room. Once the child is out, they don't care. Nobody wants to help.
They don't want nothing to do with it. Nobody wants anything to do for it. If we're so pro-life, then the fact of the matter is, for the few that are you choosing to have abortions because maybe they can't afford it or they just don't want children. Okay, if you speak to most of them, I'm pretty confident that what we will conclude is they don't want to bring a child into this world. So what we should focus on is making this world a better place for women to want to bring children into, to make it easier for us to bring children into. Let's focus on our gun laws. Let's focus on the environment, the world that we're bringing these children into. Mm-hmm. Let's not focus on the woman's womb and after the fact. By the time the baby is in my womb, it is a man who put it there. So why aren't we focusing on those things? Or why don't we improve men's rights? I don't feel that parental rights are equal at all amongst men and women.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps if we revisit some of those and we give men the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to take ownership of this baby. She does not want a baby. She is not ready for a baby. I will take ownership of this baby. She can sign her rights away. I will take this on. Maybe it would be a different situation for a lot of these women. And then we haven't even gone to the medical side of it. The reality is there's plenty of women who want many, many babies and physically cannot do it. They have blood clot disorders. They have ectopic pregnancies. If you're pro-life, then why is the mother's life unimportant? Why is it that it is only the fetus, but then after the fetus is born, we don't care about if they're being shot up in schools? We protect gun laws so that we can own guns over, shootings. We make tighter welfare restrictions for those who can't care. We take children away from parents who cannot afford their children, who try to do the good, moral Christian thing, right? Pro-life. And then we criticize them, we chastise them, and we remove them from their homes, give them to strangers, and then give money to the stranger to take care of that baby, of said child. Where's pro-lifers then?
So I guess what you're saying is that we are doing things, how do you say that? We're not paying attention to what's important. I think what you're saying is there's this ultra focus on regulating a woman's body so that they can dictate when and how a woman, has a child, but they're not providing all the necessary resources needed to make sure that that child grow up to be a good citizen, or to even allow women or for women to want to have children. But certainly your case is a special case because we talk a lot about making an exception, at least in the states where abortion is illegal. Everyone is talking about making an exception for victims of rape and incest, which kind of makes sense. But the idea is that just because someone is raped, and I'm not at all saying that it's a good thing, and that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that a woman should always have that choice, the ability to say, I don't want to carry this child, I want to carry that child. But in your case, you did the unthinkable. And I have to commend you for that, because I wonder what kind of emotional trauma that you must have gone through after you've been to the situations and you made a decision, and the decision was yours. It wasn't a government decision. It wasn't against the law. You decided what happened to me was terrible, but I'm going to live with the consequences, and you have that child anyway. But share with the viewers how that must have been heart-wrenching. That must have been very hard. How did you deal with it? Because I'm sure that there might have been other women in your position, or maybe other women who may be watching this this broadcast who probably went to the same thing.
Well, honestly, I'm still dealing with it. When you're a victim of assault, or when especially when it's a very early age and stuff, it takes a long time to heal. I'm a Christian woman, and I have certain faiths and beliefs, and I've had a good support system. I've been married and had a fantastic husband, and I had more children, and quite frankly, I mean, she just truly was a blessing. But I was able to work my way through that. Not everybody's a warrior. Not everybody's a fighter. Not everybody's able to get outside or compartmentalize situations and things to be able to keep moving forward. I guess if you speak to people who know me, some would say I didn't get through it. And then there'll be people who say, well, I never even knew she'd been through anything. So I honestly can't even answer that. I don't know. But I do know that not everyone can. I've seen people break down for much, much less, and it doesn't make them weaker. It just makes them them. We are all built differently. Some can lift 50 pounds, some can lift 1,000. It's just what it is. I don't give credit to anyone. I don't take credit from anybody. And honestly speaking, I don't necessarily give my credit to God all the way, but I don't take it from him either. But at the end of the day, my sole point is choice. If you're truly pro-life, you're pro-choice. And, you know, right now, I feel like we're working a little bit backwards. It's like condemning the lands for not growing seeds that the farmer keeps laying. You know, you need to stop throwing seeds on concrete. They don't grow. Okay, but it's the farmer who's throwing them. We need to talk to the farmer who keeps putting these seeds out in all these unfertile land and all these damaged, you know what I mean? We need to be more human and less machines. And right now, what we're saying is, under no circumstances a woman can abort. Well, there's many, many valuable and logical and valid circumstances.
But let me say this. I think we have to say this because I think people that are poor life will probably use your case by saying, here's a woman who was sexually assaulted,
who did it,
who got pregnant, and she decided to have a baby of the person who assaulted her, and then carry on the pregnancy and have the child. So therefore, every other woman can do it. So, but what do you say to that?
Well,
how do you respond to?
I would say, and I can point you, you know, and I could say I can point you to very at least 10 off the top of my head of people that I'm very close to who have been in a similar situation and have killed themselves, or their children are very emotionally neglected and mentally neglected and now damaged in the world, and you know they're being criticized for that. I know I can point them to women who have then led to a life of a whole lot more abuse because they just can't get past it mentally. So I mean, a broken clock is right 2 times a day. I mean, there's always one person that we can say, oh, see, this person did it. Like, great job. Anybody could do it. No, that's not true. Because then everybody would be everything. And we're not. So that's not the case. You know, there's plenty of women who really want children and can't have them because of conditions that would kill them. So where's our pro-lifers then? So that is my issue. And then some of us will say, well, they didn't really overturn it. They just turned it back to the state. That sounds good. That's beautiful for Black, you know, that sounds good in theory, but we're still not dealing with the bottom line, which is why does the state or anybody outside of my bedroom and my body have a choice? Why is this a conversation for you, the professor, with me when you're not helping me raise my child, or you're not going to put me, or you get my help like therapy or talk to me or be up at night with me?
I have to go. You know I have to go back, Ms. Jeanette. I have to go back to something you said that makes a lot of sense, and I haven't heard the argument put that way. I think that the way you put the argument is it's simply brilliant. You're saying that the right to an abortion, the right to decide what to do if you're unbodied, we shouldn't be talking about a constitutional right. We should be talking about a God-given right. Right?
Correct.
So which means that if it's a God-given, if you say it is a God-given right, then the government has no place on it whatsoever, whether for or against. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think every person should be able to decide what procedure, if anything, they want to go through using their own body. So I don't think anyone should be able to dictate. But what do you say to people who said, well, once you become pregnant, there is a life. So life begins at conception. And because life begins at conception, the government has an interest in protecting the unborn child. I mean, that's always the argument, of course.
Okay, so then we open Pandora's box. So then it seems to me like we have a lot of homework to do and a lot of laws to change if that's the case. No problem. If that's the approach that we want to take, well then, like I said, we must revisit parental rights. We must revisit insurance policies covering. We need to visit life insurance policies. We need to visit government assistance. We file taxes. We can't claim that child until after it's born, right? Because it is not a life.
That's true.
So, you know, we can't. So we need to visit women imprisonment. So when women are, if they happen to be pregnant when they commit a crime, we cannot charge or prosecute that woman because the baby has not gone through due diligence. That life has nothing to do with what that woman did. We have to visit, okay, so where does the man's role play? So the father of said child, are they a co-conspirator? Are they like, how does this work? Like, there's a lot now that we need to open in that case. if that's the approach that we're going to take. And if we're taking the pro-lifers, for example, I've heard quite a few people that I've had this conversation with say it's God's will. Well, there's a lot of things that can fall under the umbrella of God's will. If that is the case, we need to revisit the entire medical healthcare system. There is nothing that we need to be addressing on a medical healthcare level because it's God's will. It's God's will. If you get cancer, it's God's will. If you have, you break your leg, it's God's will. Leave it alone. It'll heal on its own. It will heal on its own eventually. If it heals poorly, it's God's will. If a man can't get an erection, why are we giving Viagra? It is God's will. He is not meant to have an erection.
Mm-hmm.
If a woman is infertile or having fertility issues, how dare we intervene by assisting her with medications or any sorts of treatment to get her pregnant, because it is God's will. She is not fit to have a baby. I mean, we just have to be very careful what box we open. I feel like we're opening a Pandora's box. So yes, we do still have some power. We're not saying we don't. We acknowledge that overturning Roe versus Wade is not necessarily stripping it completely, because we do have the power to vote and to put people in office. It's the idea, it's the whole concept that, first of all, this mentality and this mindset is even out here. Clearly, there is a bigger agenda. It's the fact that this is even a topic of conversation. Okay, this is the fact. And I'm going to tell you something. If you speak to most children, and I'm confident of this because I've lived this life, most children of these parents who did not want to have them will say, I wish I was never born.
Mm-hmm.
Most children in foster care are scratching their heads and trying to understand, why were they even born? Why are they being given up for adoption? Why are we? So that really makes us sit back and think, what's the real agenda here? What's the real goal? Because it sounds like a power trip to me. The question is, what is it that you're trying to get power of? What is it that you're really trying to take power of? Because women's rights, yeah, that's just the surface. What is the real agenda behind this? Because if it's truly about saving lives, then we'd be talking to the men as well.
Yeah, but
we wouldn't be even
Jeanette,
entertaining contraceptives.
Jeanette, listen, I'm gonna bring another young woman who's not here today, but she's I've asked her to come to the show to speak to the professor. And there are a lot of women that I know who are pro-life, and they believe that once a woman is pregnant, it's a life, it's a done deal. Conception is a done deal, it's a life. Therefore, the woman must carry on that child, and the government should be able to say that, hey, you're gonna carry this child. Now, I want to clarify something for our viewers. You are absolutely right. The Supreme Court say, let's send it back to the state and let the state decide whether or not abortion should be legal within their territories. Now, we know that there are at least right now 26 states where abortion is actually illegal, or if it is not illegal, they are working towards making it illegal. States, for example, like California, like Colorado, like New York, abortions have always been legal in Massachusetts, and abortion would continue to be legal. But there are going to be hundreds of thousands of young women who are either being the victim of incest or the victim of rape. And that in those states, we will not have the opportunity to decide whether or not they want to carry a child by result of such violence upon their body. And I commend you for doing what you did, and God bless you. That was your decision. It wasn't something that was forced upon you. It wasn't something that somebody says you couldn't do. You made that decision yourself, and you decided that despite what happened to you, you're going to keep that baby, and you did, and I commend you for that. But I don't want Republicans and other people to use your example to say, aha, you see what I'm telling you? She did it, therefore everybody can do it. So now, what would you say to young women in those states who may or may not have, had shared the same experience, and they end up getting pregnant? I mean, what can you say? What do you say to them?
I pray for them. My heart really hurts for the whole idea. Honestly, it's hard to even think. It actually makes me quite emotional. Most times there's not much time to make a decision. one can say, come here, come to me, I will help you. You know what I mean? We'll do it in a legal state. But the truth is there's too many and there's no time, and that's just not realistic, which is why we have to fix this problem. And we need to fix it fast, because this is not about women's rights to choose. This is clearly something bigger, but that's a different matter, different show, you know? But it's just way bigger. We're really losing sight of humanity, and everything is becoming transactional. You're forcing people to, even with their spouses now, have to be maybe reserved, maybe not be intimate with them, because if they get pregnant and they both don't really want a baby at this time, what will happen? You know what I mean? If this is really about pro-life, we wouldn't be attacking other things. We're transactional now. So you're turning a woman's body into a machine, into a business.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there was a separate decision by Judge Clarence Thomas. Samuel Alito wrote the decision for the majority, and Judge Clarence Thomas wrote a separate decision in which he said it very clearly that overturning Roe v. Wade is the beginning, but the court is willing to consider contraception, just like what you mentioned. So, in other words, contraception that would fall. So, if we're
pro-life, why are we trying to stop contraception? This is why it's about power. So not only are you trying to control what we do after we get pregnant, you want to control us even being allowed to avoid getting pregnant, which now puts us in an entirely different position. So now I have to avoid intimacy altogether via my husband or via a boyfriend or whatever it is my personal life chooses, because I have to be afraid of what you, the professor, or John Smith down the street, or Peter is going to tell me I can and cannot do once I commit that act. So now it's transactional. Now I can only be intimate with my partner, my spouse, or person only if I'm going to produce willing to produce a baby. Because isn't it not every time.
Isn't it what conservative has been saying, that sex should be only about procreation, and that we should only have sex to procreate, to continue humanity?
So my question is, based off of what and based off of who? See, because we don't all share the same beliefs. We don't all, this is the beauty about the freedom of choice. We're free to believe what we choose. I'm free to believe in my God. You're free to believe in yours. Your Bible may not mean what it means to you, to me. So because that is how your convictions are, because you don't want to do something, does not mean that I don't. And I'm free to do that. And that's where it's getting dangerous, because the moment we take away something it seems like such a basic right, this Roe v. Wade, this is so basic. What is next? What is next? So do you get to tell me what to eat because you don't like me being overweight? Why haven't we changed laws so that diabetics are, banned from eating foods that will cause their diabetes to be out of control, for us to get in? We're not worried about that. We're pro-life, but we're not focusing on what people are selling that's causing all these, diabetes in children and all of these things. We're pro-life, but we're not controlling the NRA. We're pro-life, but let's be realistic. So if I was sitting in front of one of your guests who was a conservative, feels all of that, my question to them would be, take away politics, take away your religion, take away anything that's subjective, that's anything that we can banter back and forth with, that anything that you may have a different opinion with me than any of these things. Take away all of these things and talk to me straight, woman to woman. What gives you the right? Why do you feel entitled to my uterus and my life and what I am doing at night or not doing, and who I am doing it with and what I can do with it after? Do you as a woman, why do you feel it is okay for me to impose my beliefs on you? Take away all of these things as woman to woman, human to human. What does it matter to you? You don't know these people's lives. You don't know their children. You're not visiting. You're not taking care of them. You're not participating in their healthcare and their growth and their schooling. Last I checked, I just signed my son up. My son up is going to college in August, and no one's paying that tuition but me. He's my responsibility according to FAFSA.
Right.
You know, they got all my information. So that would be my question to them. Woman to woman, what gives you the right? If you have an answer, a valid answer to that, then we can start this discussion.
Well,
if you could give me a valid reason why you have the right and I have the right to do it to you, then let's talk.
Well,
and don't talk to me about God or politics.
You know that they don't have a
right.
right.
Person to person.
Right, but you know that they don't have a right. They won't be able to give you a valid answer. But right. The argument that people bring often is that the unborn child is a life that needs to be protected. So in other words, the person who has nothing to do with your womb has more of an interest in what's in your room than really what's out there are other issues, people that are alive. So instead of worrying about what's inside, what's in your vagina, what's inside your womb, they should
may or may not survive.
They should be worried about other kids, people that are actually alive and don't have a place to sleep, don't have any food, receiving substandard education, not having any life opportunity, living in poverty. There are millions of children in this country that are living in poverty. So they should be worrying about these people who are actually alive and help them live a better life, as opposed to worrying about what a woman should do about her own body.
And quite frankly, the very women that are in a position to where they can't have it for medical reasons, maybe blood clot disorders, et cetera, there's tons of reasons. Where are they helping them be in a position to where they maybe could have children? Where are you? Where are you helping them with their medical situation or with the conditions that they're in? Where are you with the conditions that the person's in who can't afford that child? Or where are you? You're pro-life, but where are you helping them with those conditions so that they can choose to have a child, so that they can bring that child into the world?
This is
pro-power. This is not pro-life.
It is, but they only pro-life while the woman is pregnant for that first 9 months. The minute that the baby's out,
the baby's born, they don't care.
The life is gone. And I think the Pope said it very nicely when he said, let's not just talk about life in terms of pregnancy. Let's talk about life in an holistic way. Let's talk about life in everything that brings life, that fomented life, that create life, that make lives better, instead of worry about what a woman do and don't do. But I got to tell you, go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that I find interesting is that they don't, if it's about life, then why aren't we making this more viable? Why aren't we making this once a child meets a certain point? You know what I mean? A pregnancy meets X 20 weeks, something like that. Because the truth is, there's a lot of pregnancies that the first 6 weeks, you never get a heartbeat. It's 8 weeks later, still no heartbeat. 10 weeks later, still no heartbeat. You know, there's a lot of situations in which it is not a life. The fetus, the cell is not viable. It is not a life. So for you to take this, overturn it, and say there are no exceptions, well, then that's just ignorant. Then that means there's no validity to your case. You're just saying, do it because I said so.
Well, it's a matter of control. I want to control what you do, how you do it, who you bring to the world. But I got to tell you, Jeanette, I thank you so much for sharing your story with my viewers. That was very brave of you for sharing that personal story. That's a very, very personal story. But I'd like to bring you back because I do have 2 guests who are pro-life. And certainly I think you would hold your own very well with them. So I'm going to be looking forward to perhaps do another show next week where we can bring 2 other Black women so we can talk about this issue, because this issue of abortions, of the right to an abortion, doesn't only affect women. And I should say that to all the men who are listening, who are viewing this channel, that this decision of the Supreme Court will also affect you. Because when a woman is pregnant and she's unable to have an abortion, and if she's not ready financially or otherwise to have that baby, it's going to put pressure on a lot of men who are going to end up being father when they're not financially ready to do so. So I know people always say you got to be responsible. You got to be responsible. If you know you can afford a child, you shouldn't have sex. But I don't think that sex and enjoyment of sex should have anything to do with the size of your wallet. So again,
Exactly.
Jeanette, I thank you so very much for joining me. I hope to see you next week when we will have another show on Roe v. Wade, and it would be a debate. And I'd like to see all three women debating that issue. And certainly, I want to bring also men who could bring a different perspective into the discussion. Again, I thank you so very much. And you, thank you so much for watching The Professor. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. Please do so right now. Share the link with your friends and your family. And like I've always promised, this is the channel where you would learn something if you're watching. So keep watching. Jeanette, thank you so much. And I will see you next week.
Yes, let's do. Thank you.